Welcome, everyone, to the first Wireside Chat of 2026. And my guest tonight is Kendra Vaughan. I'm going to introduce Kendra in a moment, but first I want to kind of introduce a new wrinkle to the Wireside Chats that are beginning this year, and that is periodically I'm going to bring in, rather than MFA instructors, successful alumni who have graduated from the program and gone on to publish, in many cases, their thesis novels, either traditionally or independently. And we'll talk a little bit with them about, their success. And Kendra is the first up in that regard. And let me introduce her quickly. Kendra Vaughan is the best-selling author of The Plymbury Witch, her debut novel of magical realism set in the fictional seaside town of Plymbury, Massachusetts. The novel became a top 5 fiction bestseller at Barnes & Noble Hingham and a top 2 best-selling magical realism title on Ingram's Spark. Kendra writes magical, mystical, meaningful fiction, stories rooted in everyday life where subtle magic and emotional truth quietly shape change. She earned her MFA in creative writing from Southern New Hampshire University and previously worked with Simon & Schuster as a freelance editor and ghostwriter. She lives in Massachusetts and continues to expand the world of Plymbury through her novels, speaking, and community-centered literary events. So, Kendra, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Thrilled to have you. And everyone, here is a copy of Kendra's wonderful novel, The Plymbury Witch. And I am going to really quick throw Kendra's website into the chat. Let me do that here.
Thank you.
Yep. Please pay a visit because Kendra has a lot going on.
I do. We're actually in the process of splitting it up now for writers and readers. So that's some work that's happening on there right now.
So
But
we'll
it still
talk.
looks great. What's that?
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about, your varied career and all of the things that you do in the literary community. But first, I'd like you to read something for us from The Plymbury Witch.
All right, let's do it. So this chapter has my protagonist Ravenna, who is a modern day witch. It also has my antagonist Chase, who's a Christian minister. And then it has Ravenna's best friend Ashley is mentioned in it. Her grandmother, whose name is Maeve, is mentioned in it. And then a couple of other people who aren't quite as important. So let me read. Ravenna tended to her magical garden, surrounded by the fresh scent of flowers that bloomed year-long, and a gentle wood-smoke breeze from a nearby fireplace. Crisp autumn leaves rustled as if sharing secrets, stirring the mystical energy of Ravenna's ancestors who could be felt there. The garden was a peaceful sanctuary, an escape from the world's demands, and a place where a witch's soul could rest and heal. Ravenna often wondered if that's why Maeve preferred to look after this garden more than any other in her yard. If Maeve was trying to heal from something, Ravenna didn't know what it was. Now, even as threads of renewed energy wrapped around her, she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling of knowing Maeve was keeping something from her and that Chase was privy to it. Ashley was right. She was foolish to think Chase had warmed up to her. He was manipulating her, and now she wondered if Maeve was too. She inhaled deeply, choking months of deceit. She wiped dripping streaks of dirt mixed with tears from her face and spied Chase in the distance, watching her from the parsonage grounds. She continued weeding, pretending not to see him wave, but soon lifted her gaze, unable to resist the curiosity. She expected to find him still staring at her, but he was gone. It was just as well. She hoped he knew she hadn't waved back on purpose. Then she heard footsteps come up behind her. I hope you don't mind that I ordered this from Watson's Cafe for you, and took it upon myself to deliver it. Ravenna whipped around to find Chase holding a pizza box. I was thinking about the time I saw you with pizza that ended up in the sand, and figured buying you some was the least I could do, Chase said. Why, did you have something to do with the slice slapped from my hand that day? Maybe indirectly. Will you accept it as a peace offering? Chase held the box out for Ravenna. Ravenna thought he looked sincere, and her intuition confirmed he was. But he'd fooled her before, and she refused to let that happen again. She wanted to accept it, to invite him to share it, but she couldn't. How about instead of pizza, you tell me why my grandmother and Jim were in your office the other day? If you want to make a peace offering, that's how to do it, she said. I didn't know what, that I was in the church that day? I was, and I saw them both enter and leave your office. Ravenna's eyes narrowed, watching Chase, waiting for a sign that her words struck a nerve, but his expression remained the same. It's true, we had a meeting, but you know I'm sworn to secrecy and can't share what's said in my office. But you usually leave the door open. Anyone could walk by and listen in. Chase shifted the pizza box. It's an unfortunate circumstance of ministering to the opposite sex, that for the sake of propriety, the door should remain open. I'm sure you noticed I closed the door during the meeting, for their privacy. Yes, I noticed. I noticed it was closed when Faith walked in afterward, too. You must not have stuck around for very long then, because I opened it only a moment after she entered. Why are you so concerned about Faith anyway? Ravenna ignored Chase's pointed question, but felt her cheeks flush. You're not Maeve or Jim's minister, so why do you need to keep what they said a secret? I have to assume that someday I could be anyone's minister. Why do I feel like this is just about everyone keeping secrets from me? Chase's eyes softened, and he spoke with sincerity in his voice. Lady Ravenna, sometimes people make mistakes. They make wrong assumptions, but can change their minds. Other times, people can be stubborn and keep believing the lies they tell themselves, even when they know the truth. Who's moved on and who's stuck, Chase? The answer to that question sits inside a pizza box. Chase winked, placed the box on the bench in the yard, and left.
Thank you very much. So this novel is, it has a lot going on. But it definitely, one of the ways you can look at the novel is that you've got, as Paula is mentioning in the chat right now, you've got a witch and a minister. And there's some degree of attraction between them, but there's also a degree of repulsion, I guess you might say. And of course, that tension and that dynamic is a great generator of plot and of interest. A lot of romances could be built around that sort of conflict. I'm not sure that this is exactly a romance. I don't want to give any spoilers or anything. Did you think of this as a romance as you were writing it? And what was it that drew you to witchcraft on the one side and Christianity on the other?
So it's kind of common, especially in the fantasy world, to see books that are written where, ministers are in opposition to witches. I mean, it's a really good, true trope. So I kind of knew that I wanted to go with that trope, but you never see anything, first of all, about real witches. And you also never see anything where perhaps they could find some type of common understanding. So I kind of wanted to really address that, and I wanted to follow that all the way through. Um, and I knew that they had to be more than just friends in order for the book to work.
And was that a struggle to make that happen in a believable manner?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing if I can be honest, I think the biggest thing I struggled with was the actual romance piece, because, here he is a manipulative, really nasty guy trying to really hurt her. And here she is kind of innocent, knowing, of course, that that's the truth of the situation, but kind of innocent and hoping it isn't. And how do we get those two people together? So
Yeah.
I did really struggle with that. And the other problem was that I had to write the whole entire book from I wrote it from my protagonist's point of view. So we don't really know what was going on in his head at all. And we have to kind of take that at face value. And the reason I did that is because there's some secrets in there and we didn't want to know what's going on in his head.
Right. Right. And I mean, that gives us an opportunity to talk a little bit about point of view. So I'll take that opportunity.
Yeah.
That is I mean, when you started plotting out this novel, and I'm trying to avoid spoilers, but there's certain things that Chase knows that you don't want the reader to know yet. So therefore, you cannot use his point of view in the story, because if you did use it, then you would be obligated to share that information with readers.
That's right. And even my protagonist Ravenna didn't know. So,
Right.
she was completely in the dark, just like the readers were. So I think a lot of things were kind of aha moments in the book because they were aha moments for her.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think it points out the way in which uh, constraints can really help a novel. You kind of close off these possibilities, the possible ways of telling the story until you're left with just one. And I guess sometimes the writing process really is about eliminating those other possibilities until you're left with whatever the one is that you wind up using. And in this case, I mean, I think it was really well chosen
Thank you.
because readers learn, come to understand, uncover these surprises as your protagonist does.
Yes, and that's what I wanted. And she it would have been horrible if we knew what was going on his end, but she didn't know what was going on hers. I mean, the whole point was that we want to see her character arc, right? We want to see her
Right,
grow. And
right.
we can't see her grow if we're stuck in his world. So it just made a lot more sense to stay in hers.
Yeah. And although there's a great question in the chat that I'm going to pull out right now, did you write any scenes from his point of view, not to put in the book, but in order to assist you in determining his motivations and what he might say?
Yeah, so first of all, we had that one class in the program where we had to write from the protagonist's point of view. So I did write his well, what I thought at the time was his very first scene of how he got to where he did. And I think that scene worked really well to help me understand where I was going with him in the novel. However, I will say that one of the things I am working on now is writing the entire book from his point of view.
Really? So
Yes.
that's the sequel.
No, that's not the sequel. So I'm three-quarters of the way through the sequel, which is actually being written from the daughter's perspective,
Okay.
but not the book. It's her life continuation. But
Okay.
but I really felt like a lot of people have asked me, "Gosh, did it really happen at the end the way it happened, or did he really feel the way he did at the end, or did she really feel the way she felt at the end?" And I really want to answer that question, and I think writing the novel from his perspective will answer that question.
Oh, that's fascinating. So that you're working on that right now.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
are you going through let me just think about this for a second. Okay, so you're writing about it. So in this book, your point of view character um
Rebecca.
is Ravenna. So
Yes.
in the next book, the point of view character is going to be Chase, but you're going to be
Well,
telling
yeah,
the same story. Some of the scenes will be shared, but there will also
yes.
be scenes that will be unique to the second book.
Yes, absolutely 100%.
And
So,
and readers won't need to have read the first book in order to appreciate the second book, but they'll
correct.
gain some insight if they've read the first book.
Absolutely
And
100%.
actually, you could probably even read them in whatever order you wanted.
Yes, but the problem with reading them in the order of of the antagonist first or Chase's perspective is that obviously you will have spoilers in the first book.
Right,
But
right,
I don't think it would take away from the story.
right. And I mean, again, just to clarify, like when you say antagonist, antagonist is like not a term that defines who a person is or who a character is. It's rather what is their role in a book. And in this book, The Plymbury Witch, Chase's role is of an antagonist to Ravenna in that he's opposing her. His goals are in opposition to hers.
Yes,
Um, doesn't mean he's a bad person or anything like that. But in the book that you're working on now, he will be the protagonist because
correct.
yeah. And again, it's point of view is an amazing thing, and that's really what we build our books out of.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So it's interesting because, one of the things I wrote this book to be just a single book. And I had no intention of writing anything beyond it. And I've had so many questions about, well, what happens to Sky? What's her story? Or what was Chase thinking? So it got me to thinking that, I have a whole world I've built here. and all these characters that I've built, and a lot of people asking me for different variations of it. So I'm going to do that for my readers.
Yeah, I mean, you've built a world here. I'm going to ask you a question about that. Before I do, though, I just want to encourage people, please post questions or comments for Kendra into the chat. Actually, there's one here from Angel. I'll read it really quick. Have you thought about just changing the ending of your novel? And I think by that she means having a different ending in the second novel than you did in the first. And I guess since it's from the perspective of a different character, the ending could be different.
Absolutely. And here's what's really interesting too is when I wrote the book, so we were required in the MFA to write 50,000 words. This came out at
A
95.
minimum of 50,000.
Yeah, right. And this came out at 95,000. So
Yeah,
when I got to the very last chapter, I was really struggling with the ending. Not that I didn't know how it was going to end, but like the visual of it. And
yeah,
so I was struggling with that. So I knew, I probably shouldn't say this, but I knew I was going to pass anyway, whether that made perfect sense or not, because I had fulfilled the requirements.
right.
So I decided to just kind of end it a little bit abruptly and just sit with it after I graduated.
Hmm.
So I sat with it for about 3 months after I graduated, and I actually wrote 6 different endings. And
Wow.
and I asked all of my beta readers to come together again and read them all and give me their opinions. And to my surprise, they loved them all. So,
Well,
so it
that
was
was
a real,
helpful.
yeah, so it was a really, really difficult choice for me to make what ending I wanted, but I was really thrilled with it when I made it. I think,
Yep.
so I think exactly what you said is true. I think when we look at Chase's perspective and we see that ending is going to be very different.
And just sticking with this for a second, as attendees who are MFA students hopefully know, um, at the end of your MFA, when you finish MFA 702 and turn your novel in about 5 weeks or so, you receive an editorial letter from your professor that pretty much is a final look at the novel that tells you strengths, weaknesses, the things that you still need to concentrate on before you publish, whether you're going to publish traditionally or go indie. So I want to ask you, Kendra, was that letter helpful to you that you received, and in what ways was it helpful?
Yeah, it was incredibly helpful. I mean, one of the things that she said was, there's no visual at the end. It ends abruptly. And interestingly enough, I had given it to a beta reader prior to receiving that letter, and my beta reader said, "Where's the end?"
Yeah.
You know, so so I kind of knew that that was the situation. So I was really glad to see her say it because obviously it was a professional opinion that I needed. Um, and she had given me other advice about things. She felt in some cases that perhaps a little bit of the relationship wasn't earned and made some suggestions on how I might be able to make it a little bit better earned. And I really took those to heart and felt that that was warranted. So whether I succeeded or I failed on that, I don't know, but I definitely tried and I definitely learned. So it was
Yeah.
fantastic.
And that, what was that, Professor Watson?
Yeah, Professor Watson, she was
Uh-huh.
wonderful, wonderful.
And and Professor Watson actually blurbed Kendra's book. So
Yeah,
if you all do well in 702, maybe your instructor will blurb your book.
yes,
Um,
yes. She loved it. So I was grateful for that.
yeah, no, it's a great book.
Thank you.
Um, so here's another question. How were you able to put the witchcraft into your novel so well? Do you have personal experiences with it, or did you do research to make it authentic?
So, in my last life, I was a high priestess of Wicca, and I ran a church of 10,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah, we were a group of magical people, and I lived the witch world in a very conservative Christian community. So I can easily say that I had personal experience. However, I also became excellent friends with the born again Christian minister in town. And I started attending his services because I wanted to understand Christianity. I grew up Jewish, knew nothing about it. And he wanted to attend mine. So we went back and forth in each other's churches and we learned quite a bit about each other. And really, to this day, we're excellent friends.
Well, that's awesome. What a great thing. That seems very unusual these days.
Yes, yes. Yeah, he was one of the few that was very, very accepting.
So you didn't just research this book, you lived it.
I lived it. Yep, I lived it. I lived it and researched it, but yeah, I lived it.
Yeah. So I'm going to circle back to the other question that I was going to come to, where you mentioned that you've created this world, this town, this fictional town that has, a very um, interesting cast of characters that we meet throughout this book, and just a lot of room to explore. And it sounds as though you plan on doing that exploring in subsequent books.
Yes,
So,
and sorry.
no, please go ahead.
I was just going to say, and one of the decisions I made about my brand's magical, mystical, meaningful, so everything I write will follow that. But one of the things I decided to do in my brand also is whether I stick with this cast of characters or another, I will center all of my books in Plymbury.
Yeah. And I think that's great because, so many great works of literature and so many writers have built like, their entire oeuvre in or around a fictional setting. And so I think that really allows you to build a lot of depth into your stories and into your characters as they interweave in a series of novels and just kind of make connections that add to the reality of or verisimilitude of what you're doing.
Yeah.
So back when you were in the program and you were my student for some time and we continued to correspond while you were in the program, which was wonderful. But one of the things that we talked about a lot was, were you writing fantasy or were you writing magical realism? What the heck genre were you actually writing? So, and I think that really informs the town of Plymbury, and the world that you've created kind of stems out of that, out of your answer to that question. Is it fantasy or is it magical realism? So can you talk a little bit about how you see the difference between those two kind of related terms
Yes.
or genres?
So I really struggled when I first entered the program because I think I knew all along I was writing magical realism, contemporary fiction, but it does make sense that it can fall into fantasy. And I think that a lot of people categorize it in fantasy. But I also knew that the writers that I'm attracted to, so like for example, Alice Hoffman, Sarah Addison Allen, Heather Weber, they all write magical realism that's not fantasy. And I wasn't really sure because I was so green. I had no idea. Like when I was told that I was fantasy, I believed it. I had no reason not to. But what I started understanding and what I started seeing as I was writing and progressing through the program was that this wasn't a novel about good versus evil. This wasn't even a novel about alternative worlds. It wasn't even a novel about this world fantastical. And so I started realizing, like, I learned so much in my speculative classes, and I'm glad I took them. So I don't regret that. It really helped inform my novel. But I also think that I might have benefited from taking a contemporary class too, because it clearly had, a hero's journey in it. And we don't generally see that in fantasy. So generally, it's more plot driven and less character driven. So, and my novel is definitely character driven. So, interestingly enough, when I had, Professor Oakes, I'm so sad he passed, but
That was sad.
yeah, but when I had,
Wonderful, wonderful person.
absolutely. So when I had Professor Oakes in class, I told him what I thought because he was in my publishing ecosystem class. And I told him what I thought. And I said, I'm sorry, but I'm looking at these comps and there's no way this book is fantasy. And he looked at it and he said, Kendra, you have a beach read. you know? So I was like, yeah, pretty much. So, he was the first professor that really understood what I was trying to accomplish and really helped me follow that through. And I was so grateful for that.
That's awesome. And I mean, that's what we're hoping for, right? That there's going to be at least one or more professors here that every student will click with, who will have useful insight into your work and help you grow as a writer.
Definitely, definitely. So, it was it made a big difference in how I went forward and how I moved on and the confidence that I gained.
Yep. Here's a question I'm going to pull out of the chat. Uh, how much, well, actually, let me read this question first. This is an interesting question. This is somebody asking for advice. And she says, my thesis novel is about Christianity versus Santeria. It's based on my own experience as a bruja, and it's a battle for my main character's soul. And she shares that Jesus saved me and brought me into this program. Any advice on how to outline it without overpowering my novel?
So you're on the opposite spectrum I was. And I think that in the vein of what you're trying to write, I think that's a little bit more common as far as, obviously Christianity wants to overpower witches, and that's like a common trope. But it doesn't necessarily mean the book is common. It depends on how you're approaching it, right? So you can approach it in any way to make it very interesting and something different than what we've seen. So I would say that your best bet would be to start reading books, I'm sorry, that are in that trope and understand how they work and what makes them work so that you can extract from that how you can make yours different.
Right.
So, I mean, that's what you want to do is you want something that's very unique. And in order to make something unique in a common trope, you have to kind of break that trope open.
Yeah. Great advice.
Thank you.
Here's another question. How much was plotting first versus following the characters' wants and needs as they informed your writing?
This is awesome because I love this question. I consider myself a die-hard plotter. Like I'm so structured. And I really expected that every single word of that book would be written in my outline. So I started outlining my book and I had all my major plot points and everything was going great. And then I started writing it. And in the end, my book looked nothing like my plot points.
Mhm.
So I realized that I'm actually a plantser. So I need to have that as a guide, for my guide rails, but I don't necessarily follow it. I just write wherever the characters take me.
Right. And I mean, that's a good thing to know, to learn about yourself,
Yeah. And
I think.
interestingly enough, I had characters showing up that I had no intention of I didn't even know who they were. They literally just showed up on the page and I was like, "Oh, this is awesome. You're
Yeah.
great. You're perfect here." So,
Yeah. Well, I was reading this interview with the writer George Saunders in the New York Times over the weekend. Great story, great article, and I recommend it to everybody. But he was talking about, I'm pretty sure this was him, and he was talking about how his characters kind of do that, and for him, it's a matter of getting to the point where he can let the characters take over and
definitely.
tell their story.
Definitely. I definitely felt that. I mean, I think I was probably about a third of the way through my novel when I really understood who they were. So I had to go back and make some changes in the beginning, but it just is absolutely incredible. When you can get yourself out of the way and let them tell you their story, it's just incredible. And it goes places where you honestly do not expect, but you just go with it.
Yeah. I mean, that's not the only way to write. I remember one of the writer Connie Willis, who's a speculative fiction writer. She would often talk about how she doesn't let her characters pull that kind of stuff on her. She's the boss. She tells them
Funny,
what to do. Her
funny,
novels are very tightly plotted. They're very intricately plotted, and they're quite entertaining. Um,
funny.
but that approach to writing is a little bit foreign to me because I feel like I don't really know my characters well
Yes.
enough to tell
I,
them what to
yeah,
do.
I can't even imagine that. I mean, I go to bed at night and they're talking to me and I'm just listening. Like
Yeah,
I don't really feel, I literally feel like I'm just the vessel to write the story down.
right, right. Um, so I guess one of the things that I wanted to mention and goes back a little bit to the difference between magical realism and fantasy.
Mhm.
So this is a story that's set, and I don't mean to be like I don't want to try to compel you to my point of view, but
No, go
um,
ahead.
so here's a story that's set in a world in which wishes come true.
Hmm.
Witches have the power, or at least this witch,
Hmm.
witches of her bloodline, have the power to grant a wish.
Yep.
And everybody can get that wish granted.
Yes.
And that is something that is not, I mean, that's something that is drastically removed from the everyday experience of the world,
Correct.
right? I
Yes.
mean, maybe miracles happen, maybe some people's wishes are granted, but they're not granted on the basis of like, everybody gets a wish that's granted. At
Right.
least not, I'm not aware of that, but that's part of the world that you've built. That's the world
Yes.
building that you've done for
Yes.
this. And to me, that kind of world building is a hallmark of a fantasy novel.
Yes.
Um, and that's the tension that as I was reading this, that's the tension that I found so interesting between the aspects of magical realism, which you have throughout the novel, like for example, the talking cat,
Yes.
or not the talking cat, but the cat that's able to communicate
Telepathy.
sort of
Telepathy.
telepathically.
Mhm.
Um, Touches like that struck me as magical realism, whereas other touches, like the world building one I just mentioned, struck me more as fantastic. And I don't
Yes.
think it matters one way or the other. It's just
Yeah.
something
So
that I found interesting in the recipe that you had used to write this novel.
yeah. So I think the big difference there is that how do the townspeople react to that? Do the townspeople think it's supernatural, or do they think it's just a fact of their everyday life?
Right.
And as long as they think it's a fact of their everyday life and it's not explained, because
Yeah.
in fantasy, we have a world that we have to explain, we have to follow rules. In magical realism, we don't need to explain it. So
Yeah.
as long as
That's a
it's not,
great point.
yeah, so as long as it's not explained and as long as the people in the town accept it as reality, then it's their reality. That's the
Yeah.
real world to them.
Yep. And that sets up an interesting dynamic, the Christian Wiccan uh, conflict, because the overt manifestation of magic in your world is much more visible than it
Yes.
is in our world. It's
Yes.
like, anybody can see it. It's available to everyone.
Yes.
And in fact, I would say that it's even more visible and practically effectual, like practical magic,
Yes.
um, than Christianity is in this,
Yes.
because Christianity in your novel is very much like it is in our world,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Hmm.
And whether God is manifesting himself through, you know, the actions that people are taking, it's not, it's a matter of perspective. Whereas whether magic is actually working in this world, that's clearly happening.
Correct. So,
Yeah.
it's interesting because in the Wiccan community, our prayer is tactile. So, as long as we're, experiencing it on a physical level, then we believe it's happening on a spiritual level. So, in
Mhm.
my novel, I took it the opposite, that we're doing it in the physical and it is physically happening. So, it was the manifestation of that. So,
Yeah.
a lot of it is metaphor for, how a Wiccan actually views the world and how magical people live. So
And
it's layered, it's multi-layered.
okay, I'm trying to pull out more questions out of the chat here.
Yeah.
So here's another one. And this is the same person that had the question about Santeria. And I mean, the dynamic of her story seems like it is different from yours. But it's similar in the sense that she has experience as a bruja, as somebody, who is very knowledgeable about Santeria, just as you had lived
Yep.
experience as a Wiccan and as a witch, and so you drew on that experience, just as I'm sure she is going to draw on her experience in telling your story. So how do you make your vast knowledge of this material um, palatable to readers, understandable to readers, without either dumbing it down or being dishonest to it, or on the other hand, like hitting your readers over the head with a lot of information that they might not need to know?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things I get from a lot of people who read my novel is they say, wow, I learned so much about witchcraft. And, the truth is, they didn't really learn that much about witchcraft, but to them, it was a lot. So you really have to step back and like look at it almost like, when we talk to ChatGPT, we say, explain this to me like I'm a fifth grader. So we kind of have to look at our experiences because we're so, involved in these worlds. We have to look at our experiences from the outside in. How would it look to somebody if they were young and didn't understand it? How would you explain it to them? How would you help them understand it so they wouldn't be afraid? How would you help them understand it so that maybe they would have a little bit of compassion and empathy for who you are and the people that you are? So, those are some of the things that I looked at, and I had to kind of step back and say, all they really need to know is some of the things that happen in the witch community, but more importantly, they have to know where a witch's heart is. And I was really, really careful with my protagonist to make sure that her heart showed more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really important. I think that we, in order to dispel that fear, we have to recognize that, we're real people and we have thoughts, feelings, and emotions just like everyone else. And if that doesn't come across in your novel, it's a lost opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Well put.
Thank you.
Um, so let me see. Here's another question. My first novel was grounded magical realism based on Alzheimer's, and the protagonist is the sufferer. Does one need to focus on more of the magical and fantasy element, or is there more room now with genre blending?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I started writing my novel, I really didn't intend to put as much magic in it as I did. And I guess what happened was as I started writing, I saw opportunities for magic. I saw opportunities for the metaphor and to make it come out more clearly through magic.
Mm-hmm.
But but the intention was to open the book with the magic and then like have really very little to none until closer to the end. But
Yeah.
it just naturally progressed that it had to be shown in different ways. So I think it's not like let's think about this and let's plot this out and have all these ideas. I think you kind of have to sit with it for a while. You kind of have to live
Yeah.
with it and see where it can show up.
Yeah, and this is another example of the what we were talking about earlier in regard to point of view, where you adapt a constraint and then you follow that through to its logical extension. And here, your point of view character is a witch who has these powers, has this knowledge.
Mhm.
So it makes sense. I mean, just logically speaking, magic has to be part of the story from the start if you're
Yes.
going to be focusing on her.
Yes. And interestingly enough, I had so many people tell me that, they say, the biggest thing I get is, wow, I believe in magic now. So, so I mean, clearly I mean, they don't obviously think that, when somebody cries, a plant is going to die when their tears fall on it, but they can see the metaphor in that and it makes
Right.
them believe, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And that's a great example of the magical realism element, another realism element in the story. So let me shift gears a little bit and ask you about your journey to indie publication after graduation. Is that something you always had in your mind? And what did you do? Like, what were the steps that you followed in order to successfully launch your book?
Yeah, so there was no question in my mind I was going to indie publish. And the reason for that was because I had traditionally published in the past. And no disrespect to anybody who wants to traditionally publish or who does, because I think it's a viable path also. But it was not a viable path for me because I did not want to give up my intellectual property.
Hmm.
So, and I found that later, years later, after I published so much nonfiction, I realized like, wow, this stuff died in the publisher's hands and I can't do anything with it. It's gone.
Hmm.
So I want to keep my books alive forever. So that was my really biggest deciding point in going indie. However, I knew it was going to be very hard and challenging, so I decided to open my own publishing company, Cranberry House Publishing. I put my team together, my cover designer, my editor, my interior designer, and all of that, so that I could make sure that I was producing a professional novel.
How did you find these people? How did you put this team together?
Yeah, so it wasn't easy. So I had a copy editor that I was working with initially, and about halfway through my book, unbeknown to me, she told me she was born again Christian and she didn't want to do the book, so she
Oh
quit.
my gosh, very
Yeah,
unprofessional.
yeah. So she quit, and luckily I was wise enough to know contracts because I had contracts in my prior experience, and I had her write into the contract that if she canceled for any reason, I would get a full refund. So
Mhm,
she canceled and I got a refund. Keep your eye out for that because many copy editors do not put that in their contract.
mhm.
And so she gave me a refund, but I had originally I was going to publish in April, like actually May 1st, right? The story takes place, it starts on a Wiccan holiday in May, and I wanted to publish then. And there was no way I was going to meet that deadline. So I then contacted my acquisitions editor at Simon and Schuster, and I said to her, "I'm desperate. I need a copy editor help." And she said, "Kendra, you must not have realized that the person who copy edited your nonfiction also does fiction."
Mm.
She said, "So get back in touch with her. I'm sure she'll do it." So I got in touch with her and she agreed to do it. Thank God. And it was a rush job, but she did phenomenal. And so I asked her if she would join my team and she said yes. And then in the process of that, I went searching for a cover designer whose covers I absolutely have always loved. And it took me a really hard time to find her, but I finally found her. She's in New Zealand. And I asked her if she would join my team, and she said yes. So I was thankful for that. And then as I was
Maybe
looking
there
for,
is some real magic in the world.
absolutely. And then as I was looking for interior designers, my husband said to me, "Hey, I've been looking at this Atticus software stuff, and I'm a software guy. Like, I think I can do this for you." So I said, "We'll give it a whirl. We'll see how it goes." And he did
Mhm.
fantastic. So he's now my interior designer.
Yeah, he did a good job.
He did a
He did
fantastic
a very
job.
good job.
Very happy with it. So
Um, yeah,
yeah, so I can't complain. I'm thrilled. My team is great and they're sticking with me and it's awesome.
that is awesome. Okay, so let's cut to the nitty gritty. And if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to. But here's a
Okay.
question that I think is germane. And you don't have, again, you
Yep.
don't have to
I
be
have no,
exact or specific or anything. But
it's
how
fine.
much does all this cost?
Okay, so yeah, let's get down to this. So tomorrow night I'm teaching a class called Indie Publishing Demystified at the Plymouth Public Library, and we will go through all of indie publishing and cost as well. So remember that I didn't have to do developmental edit. My book was developmentally edited in school, and I always joke that that was the most expensive developmental edit a writer could ever go through. So, so that was done, thankfully. So developmental edit aside, which if it was not done, I would have paid for, all of the costs cost me $6,000.
Okay.
So I paid $6,000 to get my book out in the world. It's now sold over 1,000 copies, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know, that is completely unheard of for an indie published book. It's usually the 200 to 300 mark for its lifetime. So that's pretty incredible that the book has done so well. But even with that, remember that in bookstores, after you take into consideration cost and discounts that the bookstore gets and all of that, you're basically going to a bookstore for free. So you're getting about $2 a book, but it's costing you expenses to get there and potentially to eat lunch or dinner or whatever and to get back. So you're really making nothing. So the key is to try to find places where you can make more money on your book. So that would be places like libraries, craft fairs. Some bookstores actually locally, they support local authors. So they did say I could come in and sell my book and they wouldn't take any of my royalties, which was really wonderful. So all in all, I'm just shy of breaking even. So I think that's pretty damn good. I'm
It
proud
is
of it.
good. It is
Yeah.
good. And I mean, the thing is like that's just your first book. And
Yeah.
now you've got a readership and
Yeah.
something you can build on.
Yeah, and that's the wonderful thing too. I mean, the biggest thing that I focused on as we were in these bookstores was obviously my newsletter, right? So I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that I was getting newsletter signups, and we were doing fantastic. My newsletter sign up like quadrupled in the amount of time that I was on. We did 45 events in one year.
Hmm.
So So in those 45 events, we got tons of newsletter signups. So I have a great list. I would say out of that list, probably 200 of them are real true readers that will read everything I put out.
Hmm.
So
And then,
go ahead.
there's a question in the chat that I think will give you an opportunity to expand on that a little bit. What are your main marketing activities that have helped you sell so many copies, and where would you put your focus on marketing?
Yeah, so for me, I made a decision when I went into marketing that I was going to not focus as much online. And it wasn't for any reason except for the fact that I wanted to meet my readers face to face. Because I felt that if I made relationships with my readers, then they'd be more apt to recommend my book to others. And also, I want to know who they are. I can't write for them if they're not talking to me, right? So I want to keep that conversation going. So I knew I was going to do grassroots. There was no question. So I really worked hard to get my book into local bookstores. I worked hard to get myself into book clubs. I
And
worked
how
hard.
do you do that? Like, how do you get do you just like go to the bookstore and say, hey, I'm a local author, here's my book? Would you
Yeah,
stock it?
it's really hard. So one of the things I wanted to do was because I was beginning and I wasn't really sure how to approach the bookstores, I wanted to have someone else make the initial contact. Because if they screwed up, I could come in and say, "Oh, sorry, they made a mistake."
Yeah.
But if you screw up, they're not going to talk to you again, right? So that was kind of a plan for me to be able to say, "Okay, I'm going to tell you what to say. I'm going to tell you how to say it, but if I screwed up because you screwed up, then I'll fix it." And it really was just constantly knocking on doors. So I had my husband constantly knocking on doors, sending emails, calling, following up, the whole thing. And in fact, interestingly enough, the Barnes and Noble in Hingham, Massachusetts, was the toughest one to get my book in, but they've had my book now on their shelf, front facing with a talker for a year. And
Wow.
yeah, they said we can't keep it in stock. Like it just keeps flying off the shelf.
Hmm.
And I've done 5 book signings with them, 2 of which they invited me to. So I think that's what's starting to happen now is I just got a call from another bookstore in Quincy, Mass that asked me if I would come and do a book signing for them. So I think it's starting to shift now. It's less me knocking on doors and more them knocking
Right.
on mine. Yeah.
Right.
But it's constant. You just can't, you just got to do it.
And how do you balance the time between marketing and writing?
Yeah, so that's hard. So no doubt by the time Christmas came around, I told my husband I was so excited. I took 2 weeks off and I was so burnt out. I needed that 2 weeks so badly. So, but it's, I made a commitment that it was going to be 80% marketing when the book came out and 20% writing. And I
Mhm.
wasn't happy about that because I want to keep writing. I want my novels out there. It's more important to me, really. But in the same respect, if the book's not going anywhere, then, where's the writing going? No
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
So I made that commitment. And now this year, my daughter's actually getting married. So this year, I just, was it today? Tomorrow. My newsletter comes out tomorrow to let my newsletter people know, because I was sending it out monthly, to let them know they will not hear from me as often, that I will not be out in the public as often, and that I'm taking time now for paying attention to my writing and focusing on
Mhm.
my daughter's wedding. And I think there's seasons, there's an 80% writing, 20% marketing, and then there's a 20%, writing and then
Yes.
80% marketing. And I think it just shifts back and forth, and you have to have the foresight to know when to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. I mean, it's you know, each supports the other, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
the marketing is going to be what allows you to sell the next book that you write.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you can't let it go, and you can't hope that the book will just sell on its own, because trust me when I tell you, it definitely will not.
Yeah.
So even if you're traditionally published, as a traditionally published author, I still had to market my book. So
Yeah.
you can't have that expectation. Everybody thinks, oh, if I can just get into a traditional publishing deal, my book will be everywhere, and therefore, the sales will come in, but it doesn't work like that. This is what I always say to people. When you walk in a bookstore and you see all those books on the shelves, how many authors do you know on those shelves? The chances of someone just picking up your book are slim to none.
Hmm. Yeah. It's a tough business.
It is a tough business, but it's okay. It's worth it. You can do it.
Yeah.
You just have to work hard.
Yeah. Um, how many books do you read? And do you read genres outside of what you write?
Yeah. So I definitely read genres outside of what I write. I think you can learn so much from so many different genres. So I try to read across genres. The only thing I will not read is horror. I have no interest in it and it scares the heck out of me, so I'm staying away from it.
That's
But
what it's supposed to do.
yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. So if you read my book, you'll know why I don't like it. It's just not my thing. So,
Yeah.
but I do read everything else. I try to read 3 books a month, but my schedule's crazy. It's hard. So,
Mhm.
sometimes I read more, sometimes I read less. I also belong to a couple of book clubs, so I read books with the book clubs. Um, and that's always a mixed bag of what I read. So, yeah, I mean, I'd like to read more. I wish I had the time. I don't.
Mhm. We are kind of coming close to the end of our event tonight. So if anyone has any questions, other questions for Kendra, please throw
Please,
them
please.
into the chat. Um, so you've been a ghostwriter, haven't you, Kendra?
Yes.
So here's a question about ghostwriting. Can ghostwriters get paid a royalty? And I
Usually,
guess, yeah, I'm sorry,
usually
go ahead.
not. Yeah,
Yeah,
usually not.
you
Usually
get
ghost,
paid up front.
yeah, usually ghostwriters get paid up front. They know what the scope of the work is when they're told what the job is. They sign the contract based on that scope of work. And if the book takes off, oh well, too bad, so sad. You got
Yeah,
paid. End of
yeah.
story. Yeah.
Yeah, and here's a question about Amazon. Has Amazon been a partner in your or one of the means by which you get your book? You sell your book. Do you use Amazon?
Yeah, so I actually use Amazon and Ingram Spark. I use both. And Amazon KDP has been, gosh, my husband knows the numbers. I think over the past year, I've only sold 200 books on Amazon.
Mhm.
So they're not a huge partner for me. I have them though, and I want to keep them obviously. And I have sold books there. So, and people, when they ask, oh, where can I see your book? Can I get it on Amazon? I mean, you don't want to say no.
Right,
So, of course, it's there. But I
right,
don't think Amazon has done all that much for my book.
right. And I mean, are you actively involved in how your book is sold on Amazon?
I am. And, I just think with Amazon, it's quantity. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it's not quality, it's quantity. And I'm definitely not what do they call them? Authors that put books out like every month. I'm not going to do
right,
that. I
right,
want quality books. And if it takes 6 months, a year, 2 years, I'm okay with that.
right.
So that's not going to satisfy the Amazon algorithm.
I mean, do you have a schedule in your mind for the cadence at which your books are going to be coming out?
I mean, I would like to publish a book a year, but I don't know if that's realistic. We'll
Hmm.
see. I'm going to
Yeah,
let the book germinate in its own time. I'm not going to rush it.
right. Well, it sounds like you've got two books
I
that you've
do.
got in
And very,
progress
and
right now.
yes, and very well they could come out within 3 or 6 months of each other.
Yeah,
So we'll see what happens because I'm pretty far on both of them. So we'll see.
right, right. And I mean,
Yeah.
that can be a good marketing technique right there to have two books ready to go and
Yeah,
one right after
absolutely.
the other.
Absolutely. And that's what it is. Rapid releases is big. Some people swear by it and they do really well by it. It's just not my style. But I think if it's yours and you can handle that and you can handle the pressure of that, then, yeah, you'll make money.
And here's something you probably will enjoy. I bought two of the Plymbury Witch, one for myself and one to pass along. I
Oh, that's
recommend everyone buy two each time they support a friend or person they know. That's a
thank
great
you.
idea.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, that must be Dow because I sent two out to
It
her.
is now.
Yeah, I sent two out to her today. Thank you, Dow. Yeah, it's great. I've had some wonderful support from people in the MFA program. When we ended the MFA program, I started a critique group with MFA students and graduates,
Yep,
and we were together for quite a while. They're still together. I had to go off because I was marketing, but
yep,
but I may rejoin them soon, and they're doing great, and it's been awesome, and the support has been fabulous.
yeah. And I mean, that's something that I hope every student here will experience, the joy really of finding a bunch of other writers that you can have
Nice.
that kind of close, nurturing, supportive relationship with.
Yeah, it's great. And I have another writer who lives now in Texas who's moving up this way. And, whenever he's in this area, we contact each other and get together and we keep in touch and help each other. And I imagine by this year in 2026, I think we'll support each other's writing. So it's great. The connections are awesome. I mean, that's one of the reasons to take the MFA program.
Yes, I agree. I mean, coming to these events is one way of making connections. The writers community, another way of making connections.
Definitely.
Looking for people in your area so that you can, meet up face to face, have coffee. All of those are great
Definitely.
ways to build a little
Definitely.
community.
Definitely. I mean, I encourage everyone, get in touch with me. Let's keep in touch. Let's see what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to put your website back into the
Thank you.
chat here so that everybody can check it out.
Thank you.
That's a great author photo of you, by the way.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I took it myself. I know that.
Did you really? Wow.
I did. I used to be a photographer.
Okay. Gosh, you've done a lot. You've done a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great because it's going to make for great characters in my stories.
That's right. Well, if there are no further questions, I'm going to call it for the night. And Kendra, thank you so much.
Thank you
again for coming and for inaugurating our new feature in Wireside Chat of talking with successful alums. And it's been a delight. I really enjoyed your
definitely.
reading.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I look forward to coming back and seeing the others.
I hope you will. And again, here's the Plymbury Witch. I read it over the weekend. Just fantastic. Really enjoyed it. A lot of surprises. A lot of great moments.
Thank you.
So with that, wish everybody good night. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.